Okay, before we get into our conversation, we're going to be talking about sustainable farming practices that equate to where we're buying our food, how to support local farmers, all the good stuff here that is going on at Yellowbird Foodshed. But before we get in there, why don't you just introduce yourself and we'll get started?
Yeah, sure. Benji Balmer. I live in Mount Vernon, Ohio, about an hour northeast of Columbus. I am married, have four children, 19, 16, 13, and 9. We homeschool. We have a little hobby farm. We raise chickens and, grow some food and mow the lawn and pull weeds and do all that kind of stuff just to try to keep up. But the Yellowbird is situated here as well. And we kind of took that vision for our family and how we wanted to do that, and then really honed it in on the food side, what we wanted to focus missionally on together. And that was finding and buying what we would consider to be Ohio's best, right? So the top shelf, top tier, everything is from produce to meat to dairy to snacks even. And then, kind of slinging that back out into the marketplace to the end user. We're 11 years in. So my oldest daughter, 19, who just moved out into her own apartment around the corner from us, was 8 when we started. And so we've now raised children through the process and done everything that's involved with that. And it's just been an ongoing, ever unfolding adventure.
Yes, I want to start here at the origin story of Yellowbird. First and foremost, why the name Yellowbird?
Yeah, so the Yellowbird is in like mythology, kind of like your one true love.
Oh,
But most of the time, like in tragic circumstances, Shakespearean style, you don't know your Yellowbird is your Yellowbird, whether it's a person or a thing, until you've lost it. And so too often you look backwards and you're like, oh, that was my Yellowbird, and you pine for that thing which you mistreated or mishandled. And the idea being our food system is that, and that, if we don't act now, we might be too late. We might be past the point of no return. And also, if you've ever watched Portlandia, it's easy to market a color and an animal together. And so, it's kind of a little bit of all that.
okay. Okay, so going back, you said you've been doing this for 11 years. I want to know more
Uh-huh.
about the origin story, the root, if you will, of why you and your wife
Yep.
decided to start Yellowbird.
Yeah. So we were both kind of raised in what I would call like the fast food era. And that's all we then kind of carried into our marriage, although we knew how to make a couple things. Once we had a kid,
Hmm.
Sarah's always been very in tune with herself and nature and spiritual things. And so she was like, one, I don't think we're eating correctly, but two, I don't think we're probably supposed to feed this young thing, this thing that has no choice but to take what we give it, some of the things that we grew up eating. And so we began to just experiment and look and find and question and read. And really, for us, I always talk about raw milk, which is not for everybody, but for us in our journey at that time, it was, unpasteurized, unhomogenized milk. And that is almost a metaphor for the gatekeeper for what then opened up to us when we began to learn about that particular thing and the benefits, but also why we didn't have access to it. In Ohio, you cannot sell retail raw milk.
Hmm.
And so there was a story behind that. And we could talk a whole thing about that. But for us, when we found out that, then we were like, okay, well, let's go find raw milk. It exists, it's out there, and then jump through the hoops to get it. Well, then we went to sourdough is another one. Okay, well, why as a country do we have such an intolerance to gluten? And my wife being one of those, like from a young age. And why does sometimes when you're using a sourdough starter and a certain type of wheat,
Hmm.
does it not react the way that it does with every other thing that you eat that's in our main food system? Well, what we began to find out was all of these things were like kind of out there still, but also really hard to get to and almost inaccessible, even from a knowledge standpoint. It was like a lost database that we just did not have access to. But if we dug a little bit, we could find. And when we did, we could find a solution.
Hmm.
And then once we found a solution, now we're telling people about it. Of course, we're in our early or mid 20s at this point, late 20s. We're having another kid, our family's growing. We've begun to raise our first kid on all of these things that we were finding out, raw milk, sourdough, all these different, fermented foods. Well, I started telling people about it and, hey, do you know some of this stuff? And most people our age did not.
Yeah.
And then many of them wanted some of these things. And so when we would go to a farm to get milk or to get eggs or to get pastured meat, they would be like, hey, can you pick us up some? And while you're out there, because it's not easy to get to the places sometimes, it's out maybe an hour one direction or even further. And so we would pick up stuff for people and bring it back in a cooler and then kind of start slinging food around. Well, I looked at Sarah and I'm like, we lived in Findlay, Ohio at the time. And I'm like, there might be something here. Like there might be a business here, even if it's just a side hustle. Sure. And so, we were kind of growing more and more food as part of our process. We were getting chickens for the first time. We were like, okay, let's just start slinging food around and see what it amounts to. And then we went from having 10 people that we were finding food and growing food for to having 20 to then, well, if we're going to do anything else, this requires more infrastructure. Are we ready to do that? And that's kind of how it all started.
Did you expect to be entrepreneurs? Did you ever think that would be your trajectory?
I always kind of had an entrepreneurial, like it's just kind of who I was. I did not know what that meant. It was more of like an innate ability to create a following. Sure. And that could have been around my favorite band or my, whatever, like just looking back, that's kind of how it was. What I didn't know was, well, it's way more complicated to do like the thing that you're good at doing, which is finding out stuff, investigating things, then finding the product and then getting it to somebody. That with infrastructure wrapped around it, think vehicles, drivers, a warehouse, refrigeration. That's what I didn't know. And so the journey really became finding out all of the things that I didn't know and realizing, oh, the system is the way that it is in terms of food specifically in our country for a very good reason. And that reason, there's many of them, but it mostly is it's not easy to do logistics of local food. And so that really is what the thing became. That's the problem to solve. It's not, is there food out there? The answer to that is unequivocally, absolutely. There's plenty of food. It's how do you take it from the source of where it's at to the consumer without it costing a gazillion dollars.
I'm glad you're starting to talk a little bit about some of the hurdles that you've had to navigate and how you had this desire to bring the information, which I do think the tides are turning. This information is more, I guess, readily available. More people are talking about this. I know raw milk is a very polarizing topic for people.
Yep, sure.
But I want to talk about, or I guess even lean into the road bumps that have been on this path to getting, again, both knowledge and product to consumers.
Yeah. Well, there's twofold. So some of it is systemic. And then some of it is literally just the cost of food. And so the systemic stuff is, so no matter what your take one way or the other on raw milk, the reason we don't sell raw milk in Ohio retail is because 100 or 200 years ago, it was very dirty. It was a very dirty business, not dirty mobster dirty. The cows were standing in bacteria that was dangerous and it would get into the milk. And so you had to have a system that existed to keep people safe on the health spectrum. Well, that's fine, especially in the moment. But, jump ahead 100 years and sometimes things have changed. Well, in this case, you could take any product and there's just a system that's built 85 checkpoints along the way, 5 of them probably really good and really needed, and 80 that are just more redundancies that make it almost impossible for a small grower to get their product to market. Okay, that's the systemic. When I say that, that's what I mean. The other side of it is, if you are growing, let's just use lettuce, because lettuce is very temperature sensitive. And you've got a field full of lettuce and you're going to pick it before the sun's up at 5 in the morning to get it when it's at its coolest. And so when it's also at its tastiest, you're going to cut all that lettuce. Well, now it's on the clock. Now you've got that lettuce is actively dying. And so, you might have anywhere from 1 day to 3 weeks before it's going to be too gross for the consumer to eat, in terms of wilted or wet or whatever it might be. Well, that person that's cutting that lettuce almost always doesn't have any kind of cold chain process to take that lettuce from the field to the consumer. Meaning, is there a way to get that immediately into cold water? Is there a way to get it immediately into a cooler? Is there a way to then get it immediately into a van or a truck that's refrigerated to get it to a place where that's either a farmer's market or a distributor or a retail establishment? Almost always, 99 times out of 100, the answer to that is no. They do not have that. And because the system is not built for it, because we've, over the last 40 or 50 years, gotten all of our lettuce from 3 giant facilities out west in California somewhere. Well, go back to the Yellowbird. When you see that, the very first thing in my mind is that is wildly unstable. A drought happens, E. coli outbreak happens in one of those facilities, which all of this has happened, of course, over the last 10 years, on and on and on. And all of a sudden, it's very hard to get lettuce. And I'm going to keep using lettuce. You could fill in broccoli, beef, cheese, whatever you want. But if that's the case, if we don't have a local food infrastructure, if we don't know where our food's coming from, we are extremely susceptible to all kinds of disasters happening. And you can look to and always use the pandemic as the example, which was like the canary in the coal mine. If you didn't see it already, that was the place to see it. And realizing that we've got to figure out a better way that's more sustainable and more reliable. The problem is that lettuce coming from California has been coming from California for 30 or 40 years. And we think that whatever that price tag on the shelf in the grocery store is, that's the real cost of real food. And it is not.
Do you have hope? I mean, this all seems a little bit overwhelming. We haven't even gotten into, again, the farming practices and supporting farmers and how difficult that is. But what is your hope, I guess, in getting this information out?
Well, my hope is this. My hope is that the consumer begins, and like you said, the tide is turning. The information is out there. People are making better choices, whether it's to use less plastic or to use better water, whatever. There's a million different things that you could be passionate about. One of those things is food. And when you know what we now know and are learning about how our food relates to, if nothing else, our own personal health, our mental health, and it's all tied together. You can't divorce one system from the other. And when you tie all that together, you begin to say, I have tasted local food. I've tasted the best tomato is always the tomato you grew yourself, right? Or your grandma grew. When you have access to that, are you willing to put your dollar where your mouth is? And if you are, then here's what can happen. And there's a list, but I'll just get into the simplest version of it. The infrastructure that's needed and required for our local food growers to be able to do what they're doing and use the practices we want them to use. So to just touch on the farming practices, we know what we don't want on our food. We know what we don't want sprayed or how the, could be going into the soil or all of those things. We know what we're avoiding. That's part of it. And so we can know when we know who's growing it and what their practices are, what isn't being used. And so let's just use that as the example. And so we can say, listen, we want you, farmer A, B, C, whatever you're growing, to take our dollar. We want this to be used for your infrastructure. We want you to be able to buy heirloom seeds or whatever our passion might be. We want you to be able to amend your soil this way. We want you to be able to get good pack houses and clean water onto your farm and refrigeration so that our product stays better longer, et cetera, et cetera. That's what, as a consumer, we're paying for. And so it currently sort of exists, but it's not at a level that is meaningful enough that if infrastructure went down in California, that we would be able to supply the state of Ohio with lettuce, let's say.
Mhm.
And so that's my hope. My hope is that we keep making the choice with our dollar, because it's the dollar that moves the needle. It's the dollar that dictates what is going to be in the marketplace. If we stopped buying Pepsi, Pepsi would stop producing it. It wouldn't be profitable any longer. And so that's the thing. When will we say with our dollar, this is what I want, and I'm willing to stop at nothing to make it happen?
Absolutely. So, yes, we can combine this question, my next question. I was going to talk about cost because I think that's one of the most overwhelming things, especially again,
Yeah.
most of my audience are moms listening. And when you
Yes.
start having, you have 4 children, you,
Yep.
Benji. So it's like, how can I make this a sustainable thing? Because it does seem really expensive, but also, I guess, tied to that question, why would someone choose a service like Yellowbird? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you're local to Central Ohio, but why would someone choose something like that over a traditional grocery store because
Yes.
it's more cost efficient?
Yes. There's a couple different things. Number one, this 10 years ago, this was a much bigger argument. Now, walk into the store, go to Chipotle, look at your receipt, and we are level pretty much. We're under on eggs. We used to be $6 a dozen, and we were ridiculed for it because you could get eggs for $2 a dozen. I was in Kroger a couple nights ago picking up avocados, which we don't grow in Ohio, and the top shelf eggs were $9 a dozen, $2 more. And I don't know where those are coming from. I don't know what practices are being used on those. It's just good marketing, and maybe it's good farming too. It doesn't matter. They're more expensive. And
Mhm.
so now it's, I mean, really, it's almost, well, now it's the same price. And so now, are you just willing to do a little bit more work on two areas? Number one, are you willing to plan a little bit further ahead on your food ordering? It can't be in the moment. Real food doesn't work that way. It's not, well, I'm hungry at 10:05 a.m. for, this, and I'm going to have it within 30 minutes. I had to have thought about this days prior, right? That's number one. Number two is, are you willing to make a lifestyle change? And the lifestyle change is, for us, for 10 years, we've eaten 21 meals a week at home. It's 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. And so I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but I've proven by experimentation that, number one, the cost of food, if you just want to look at it apples to apples, is probably cheaper than trying to eat out on the move, on the fly. It requires a lot of forethought and a lot of meal planning, but the payoff financially is wonderful. And then two, also, what are you paying for that is the hidden cost? Think about all the things that we mentioned: mental health, physical health, going to the doctor, insurance plans, all the things that you're going and you're paying for, maybe not immediately, maybe not right now in your 30s, but if you continue to eat this way, I'm talking about the other way, not healthy. At what point do you look at and say, I see others that are my friends, family, and beyond that are in their 50s to 90s that are facing what they're facing, whatever that might be. I got tons of people this week that are in their 70s that are either my own family or friends' families that are in multiple either surgeries for digestive stuff or for just their physical makeup, replacement of hips, all these different things. Again, the systems aren't divorced. They're not unrelated. You're reaping what you're going to sow, or you're sowing what you're going to reap. And if we don't make those choices now, it's the Yellowbird principle of, we might be too far gone. And so you can't just look at a dollar bill and just think that, well, the thing that I'm looking at on that price tag on that shelf says $1, and then these folks are asking $2. It's wildly, whatever. It's, well, let's look at the big picture, the long haul, and then make our decisions accordingly. Again, at that point, the information is available and you can make whatever decision you want to make. I think that there are more and more, I know there are because I watch them every week, making a decision for all of that to say in a health reason. But then you get the icing on the cake. And this is, if you've eaten a carrot or a tomato or good meat or good cheese or whatever, there's a reason that when you eat it and you're like, well, it doesn't taste like this when you get it in the grocery store. Of course it doesn't. The thing that you're getting in the grocery store is the cheapest, industrialized, homogenized, commoditized, because it has to be that way to be able to do it on a scale that gets it from on truckloads and ship containers from around the world to that shelf, and it still be relatively like stable. And so it doesn't taste great, and it doesn't have nutrients in it, and it doesn't have all those things because it has to be picked 6 weeks ago to be able to get from one place, or 4 weeks ago from one place to another. It's not even ripe. It's not even ready, but it's got to be stable because we got to get it to Ohio or New York, whatever the case might be. And so it's not an, even if it was a little bit more expensive, which we have been at times and still are at times, it's not a straight across, well, I'm asking you to buy the same thing that's in the grocery store. I'm saying to you, this isn't even the same product. And so you're going to have to get to a farmer's market, get directly to a farm, find a Yellowbird, go to a restaurant that's sourcing local, on and on and on to get the thing that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many thoughts I have. One, I do think that where you and I are very aligned is my mission of sorts is to help
Mm-hmm.
people get rid of what's superfluous and unnecessary. And to me, I consider how much money am I spending as I drink my cold brew coffee that I picked up and didn't
Yeah,
make.
sure.
But I think about what are we spending unnecessarily? What can we cut out to make space for what matters? That's again my kind of
Mm.
mantra. And if you also make small changes, I mean, James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. We all know that small habit changes equate to big, sustainable, long-term change. And for me, I started making sourdough about a year and a half ago. And my
Mm.
breakfast every day is local farm fresh eggs and sourdough. And I'm a creature of habit, so I love doing that. But it's really
Yeah,
inexpensive to eat this way. And so I think if you can just make small tweaks to your week, it does take a lot of intentionality and a proactive desire to want to change, but we're not necessarily saying overhaul your entire life. We're saying look at maybe a meal a day and switch that and make a better change, and then that will add up
absolutely.
longevity.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I mean, there's so many people that are like, we live a very different life than many. And so when people look at it, it is visibly different and it feels insurmountable. And what I say is, listen, we didn't wake up this morning and do this.
Yes.
We've been doing this sequentially for a decade or more and have landed now. I mean, I guess my daughter's 19. I keep saying a decade, and really what I mean is 2 decades.
Yes.
And we've landed here. And so, and I still make tweaks, and I think you still make tweaks
Mhm.
on those atomic levels. And so it's an ongoing process of when I learned as I got older that the to-do list, this was a giant mind shift for me. I had a to-do list always. I make a ton of lists. I mean, I got them sitting in front of me on every pad surrounding me. It's just how I operate.
Sure.
I, at some point, thought, I'm going to get to the end of this list. And when I realized after years of never getting to the end of the list is a hydra. If I scratch one thing out, two things appear, right? And so when I realized that and then became patient, became comfortable in the fact that my list was, I was going to die someday with lists surrounding me that never got done. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, now I'm not afraid of making little tweaks and little changes, knowing that I've got whatever I've got ahead of me, whether it's a day or 50 years, I've got to start now. And when I start now, I'm not going to start with 50 things. I'm going to make eggs and sourdough bread for breakfast every morning, and that's going to be my thing. And I'm going to have a good rhythm with it. I love it. It's so flavorful. It's so nutritious. And then eventually, I think you would testify to, when you look backwards, you're like, oh, I used to spend fill in the blank, $15, let's say, on some sort of healthy, fast breakfast and a cold brew. And probably normally you do your own cold brew. So when you do go out and spend $5 or $6 on one, it's listen, I've had 20 days in a row of
Yeah.
saving $5 or $6 making my own cold brew.
Yes.
You start to see all that add up over the course of a week, a month, a year. You look back and you're like, man, you know what? I'm looking at my budget or however I keep my finances, and I'm like, I spent $20,000 last year on groceries. I can see it because I buy all my food from Yellowbird, so I can see my own account.
Mm.
And I'm like, that seems like a lot. And then you do the math and you're like, well, if I took out 4 kids to Chipotle once a day, I'm picking on Chipotle because I can't believe, I mean, my kids will show me a receipt and it's $15 for their food. And I'm
Yes.
like, that's an $80 bill every time, times 7 days a week, times 52 weeks a year. Like, I just saved so much money by making infinite amount of Chipotle bowls with my own ingredients, on and on and on. And that's one area. And I think you probably, and I know I've listened to some of your episodes where it's like you talk about sleep and time management and clutter and whatever it might be. And it's like, it wasn't a sweeping, well, I'm just going to start tomorrow and get better sleep.
Mhm.
It's, I'm going to do these little things along the way that are going to set me up for success. And then when I do them, all of a sudden the teeth on the gears start to click together.
Mhm.
And oh, right. And
Mhm.
you're also then clicking it into all the other gears. We're just one tool. The food is just one tool. You're probably also, if you're eating or thinking about food this way, thinking about conscious movement and prayer and meditation and journaling. And just because I see it with our customers every day, and it's, oh yeah, you're making all kinds of other changes. This is that tool so you can make that change on the food side.
Mhm. And yes, the other thing I was going to say is in regards to the animals, I hate the way that animals are treated in these factory farms. I would rather spend a few dollars more for the chickens to be treated humanely, for the cows to be treated humanely.
Uh-huh.
To me, that's my, in a sense, an activism. And I guess I'm not going to completely abstain from those things. At one point I did. I was like, oh, I'm going to go become a vegetarian because I don't like the way they're treating animals. But there were still people opting into the system that mistreated animals. For me, I'm like, I'm going to do something. And again, I no shade to people that choose this kind of lifestyle, but for me, I was like, okay, actually, what if I opted into a system that treats these animals well, gives them like a good quality of life, and I'm also getting the richness of nutrients with these foods that they're supplying. So it just seems,
Yeah.
I guess, more of a connected, I guess I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but to me, it's a way that I can be an activist of sorts for these animals. And I'm okay with that as well.
And also realizing and honoring death and life and the cycle therein, that it doesn't, I mean, if plants are living as well, and like I said, when you cut lettuce, you are killing a plant and then absorbing it, and ultimately what we're all doing is taking the energy from the sun. The sun's either coming through a plant or it's coming through an animal that ate a plant.
Mhm.
And the way that we farm animals and the way that we use animals. And then saying, listen, children, guess what? If you're going to eat animals, you're going to know that something died for you to be able to participate in that system. And you're going to honor that, and you're going to hold that, and you're going to choose for yourself. You may not, I know tons of kids that were in our circles that did not eat, didn't eat animals through their youth because they knew, but they knew it wasn't being hid behind a veil of, well, the chicken nugget shows up and you have no connection to that. You don't know what that is. Although would argue we don't really know what a chicken nugget is, but you get the point. And then from there, you now are forming humans that are going out into their teens and 20s, and they're like that we've built up that have that knowledge that we didn't have. I didn't have it.
Mhm.
And so you're now making conscious decisions. And if you're making conscious decisions about whether or not you're going to eat humanely treated animals, you're also probably making a conscious decision about the clothes that you wear and the trash that you're discarding, and on and on and on. And so, we're just one little cog in that wheel, but it's super important.
Absolutely. There is so much more that we could talk about in regards to the farming practices, the why behind it. I might have to have you back to talk about that at a future time, but
Yeah,
I do want to
sure.
give some support and encouragement here to the moms and dads listening to how
Uh-huh.
maybe how you've raised your kids. How would you encourage the parents that want to make some overhauls and instill that into their children as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, you want to go away with a practice, a transformation, not just information.
Yeah.
And what we've done with our family, the very first thing that we decided, Sarah always wanted to be a teacher, and she went to public school, I went to public school, but we decided for us, we were going to raise our kids kind of in, and I know I've listened to some of your great guests that have done unschooling and this kind of schooling. And I mean, we've changed, studies and doctrines and a million times. The point was that we were going to go get our hands dirty and that we were going to go allow our children to interact with their surroundings outside of a traditional classroom. That was what we decided to do. Really what that is, it's almost Jeffersonian in that we're going to teach our kids to teach themselves anything. I'm not going to teach them one particular thing. And in doing that, we've watched now 4 children gain wings and fly in all these different areas. And they're not the same. One chooses this, one's an artist, one's, linear, all the different things. But whatever it was that they wanted to do, specifically in this case, let's take food. We just gave them the tools to go see it and taste it and touch it. Get tactile. Put a basil plant in the windowsill. That's the easiest thing and the first thing that I say to do. Go to anywhere. Go to Whole Foods, go to Lowe's, go to wherever. Buy a basil plant, put it in the window. You pretty much can't kill it. Pick the leaves off to smell, touch, taste, and then start putting it on stuff. Putting it on stuff that it goes on, like spaghetti. Put it on stuff that doesn't go on so that you can see how it doesn't mix with chocolate pudding, right?
Yeah.
You want to see both sides of it. And so then see where they go from there. Well, I'm starting to see and put together these pieces of information of, oh, this is what that plant is doing. And it gets bigger. And when you put water and sun, and then when you don't put water, and it gets all the different things. Now, move on from that to whatever it is that they want to do next. So let's say it's, they want to know where eggs come from. Let's say they want to know about animals, whatever it might be. Then just add on another thing. Eventually what ends up happening is that you build up this tool bag of information and skill sets that you may or may not use. You may never grow any more food, but the act of doing it once opened up 50 more questions that needed to be asked so that you were just having the engagement. What does it lead to? It leads to you and your child having a human experience, having well, let's cook tonight. Well, let's sit around the table tonight. You can use it as a project. I don't care if you homeschool or not. It's just great practice. Let's sit and get off of our screens and see what it looks and feels like to eat the food that we just cooked. It's supposedly, I've heard somebody say slow food is you need to spend as much time eating it as you prepared it. Did it take an hour? Did it take 2 hours? Then sit for an hour, sit for 2 hours, eat slow. Take time in between courses, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you may not do it every meal. You probably will not do it every meal. But all of those little things along the way, give yourself a lifetime of experience that you're building with your child. Again, to do what? Go out and learn anything. It may be that they don't want much to do with any of that, but you've given them a skill set there that then they can take and apply to any other area of their life. And now, you look back and I don't regret any of that. Like I don't regret any minute that we spent being bored or, just looking for worms in the dirt or staring out the window at something that's growing and wondering, that looks like it's bigger today than it was yesterday. Well, it was hot and sunny and, it rained a little bit or we watered it. That's what happens. And it all connects and light bulbs go off and synapses fire. And now you're like, man, we're doing it,
Absolutely. Well, as you wrap things up here, I did want to get a few of the insights that you might have for local Columbus farmers. Obviously, I'm so grateful for all of them that are participating and getting these foods to the consumers. But what are some of your favorites that you have in your fridge and in your home that you want to shout out to?
Yeah, I always throw a shout out to Sweetgrass Dairy. They're in Fredericktown, Ohio, which is kind of out by us here in Mount Vernon. They're really good at rotational grazing, animal out in pasture. So think beef, but think also everything that comes from the dairy from beef. So you're looking at cheeses, you're looking at gelatos, you're looking at also things like soap that, are using beef tallow to make a product like that. We do a lot with Three Creeks down in Groveport. They're kind of south of the city. And then they partner with a couple other small farms. One of those is Roots, Fruits, and Shoots, which is Dana Hilfinger. Those people we've been with for a decade. We've watched them grow their operations. We've watched them learn how to become like the best raspberry growers, brassica growers. And they're doing it at a scale that is, we can feed thousands. It's not that we can feed 10 or 20. They've shown me that because they're rock stars at what they do and they're constantly getting better and honing their craft, that you can feed a population, you can feed a food shed. And so those are like, man, it's just been, I've considered them co-warriors along the way in the local food movement over the last 10 years.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that listeners know probably where they can find you, but I'll just let you shout that out to listeners. Where can they find you online?
Yep. Yep. We've got an at Yellowbird Foodshed Instagram social media account. But if you ever want to order anything, so think, back in the day, we used to just be a farm box. You pretty much had no choice. You'd get a small, medium, or large. We'd pick what's in it. We'd send it to you. That's what you got. We've made it a 1,000-item online shopping experience. So if you want to pick every single thing that you get every single week or every fourth week, it's all up to you. So at Yellowbird FS, that's for foodshed.com, you go in, you create an account. It's just like shopping a sweater at J. Crew or your Netflix account. You're going to put some info in. You're going to go in and add what you want. You're going to pick how you want to get it. We'll deliver it to your house. We'll take it to a community pickup. You show up, you get everything that you ordered, and we've done the sourcing of that. And then we want you to know where it came from. And so we send out a newsletter every week that you can find either, through an email or on our blog. It's going to tell you where everything came from, how to prep everything, a picture. If you've never seen a rutabaga before and you got one because you got a farm box, I want you to know what it is. It's not just a paperweight. So you can, cut this and store it and then put it onto this and add it to this and cook it like this. All that's there. We want you to have as much info as possible. And so that's how you kind of find us. You start by putting your toe in the water, and then we'll pull you to the deep end gradually as you make your journey into local food.
Well, and what's so fun about something like a rutabaga, so many of us haven't tried that kind of vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think exploring it as a novice with your children, and I think there's something to be said about, hey, we're all doing this together. We're all trying new things together. And there's something about that connectivity that you're doing it alongside your kid. You're not some like this expert that knows better. I just think it's a really lovely thing that you can do as a family as well. So I love that you guys have some obscure foods that I have not tried. That's definitely
and we're counting on it. We know, I mean, there's times when we've gotten things that I haven't even tried and I don't necessarily like. Rutabaga would be a great example of like, it's super bland.
Okay.
But what are you going to do with it? Well, you're going to put it on a sheet tray. You're going to put salt and pepper and oil on it, and you're going to cook it like that. That's one way. Then you're going to add it to a soup. That's another way. You're going to put it into a medley. That's another way. And, you get to the point where over time, a couple of things happen. Number one, your gut biome begins to transform because you're eating the rainbow, you're trying all kinds of new things. But two, you're then deciding, sometimes I don't like this thing that I tried, and that's fine. But how many times have you tried something that you've never had that you ended up liking, and now it's a staple part of your diet?
Yes.
And you're like, man, there was a time when I had never tried that, and I had to get my hands dirty and get in there, and figure it out together. And if you're doing it alongside and with your children, like what better experience? You think about how we were shaped and what we were doing with our parents or what our parents were doing with their grandparents. And it's like, that's how culture happens. That's literally the definition of it. And so let's go make culture with our kids.
Yes, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, just two rapid fire last quick questions here that I always ask my guests. The first one is, what has been a beneficial resource in your life that you want to share with the listeners?
Yep. I would say that a very accessible way to dive into this is the author Michael Pollan, Pollan. He's very widely recognized. He's written The Omnivore's Dilemma. He's written
This Is Your Brain of Plants. That's
yes. Yep, that's a great one. A couple of different things in that, like I'm going to get some science, but I'm also going to get some real life stories here that I can relate to that allow me to open up my mind to what it is that's kind of calling me. It's kind of pulling me. Why do I want to eat this? He's kind of getting into some of that. And that was really transformative for me when I first started, maybe 15 years ago. It's a great threshold to like, well, I can now go down any rabbit hole because he's going to give me a ton more resources.
Hmm. I think it's Food Rules is his more easily digestible little book of
Yeah.
tips
And
for
here's an example
living.
from that I still to this day
Yes,
remember.
what is it?
If you're hungry enough to eat an apple, this is like talking about snacking.
Yeah.
Don't snack. If you're hungry enough to eat an apple, then eat an apple.
Hmm.
That's the snack. And that's how hungry you need to be in order to eat. And I'm like, oh, I've eliminated so many crappy things that I just ate because it was like I'm bored.
Hmm.
When I was like, oh, yeah, that's a great little mantra. Am I hungry enough to eat an apple right now? Not really. Well, then I don't need anything. If I am, then I should just eat an apple.
Yes, which also goes back into what we were talking about and where can you get rid of what's superfluous in your grocery cart. If you're not,
Yep.
why are we buying all these snacks when that tip is actually really practical and applicable? So I love
Yep.
it. I love that. All right, my last question for you is what is something that you can't stop talking about? And I don't think I'm going to let you say, actually, I'll see what you have to say. Is it in line with what we've been talking about?
Well, it is and it isn't. It's not directly related to food, but I will talk about breath work to anybody that will sit and listen or exchange a story. There's no other thing besides food that has so transformed my life in the last 8 years. And you can think just sitting and being conscious of breath all the way to a classic like Wim Hof type figure that has kind of made what has been an ancient thousands and thousands of year old tradition accessible to Westerners through an app, right? But it doesn't matter because it is so transformative. And the thing that might be so mind blowing to me about it, and that I'll continue to say, is that there's no outside influence. I'm not eating anything. I'm not taking anything. It's always something I'm doing already.
Mm.
How can that do what it does? I can't explain it.
Hmm.
And yet I'll never stop, one, doing it and experimenting with it, and number two, talking about it because I think it's like, hey, it's free. It's right there. You can do it anywhere. It doesn't have to be long. It can be seconds. I've never experienced anything like it. And I'm like, how did we not grow up just starting from birth talking about breathing?
Would you say is that helpful, like a helpful tool for anxiety, or why are you, I guess, practicing
Yes.
work?
Yes, if you've listened to me for the last 45 minutes, you get that I'm amped, right? I'm running at a high frequency if I really get going on something, and
Uh-huh.
that has to be balanced.
Yes.
And so it's not just like, well, go sit and catch your breath. In this case, it's think about another one that's in the breathwork line is like yoga nidra, which is like a 10-minute experience of almost like a nap, but you're awake. And
Mhm.
it involves breath and consciousness about knowing and checking in with your body. It's
Mhm.
all the same thing to me, kind of, but at the end of the day, it has helped me manage being 45. And need I say more? If you're 45, it is weird. The
Mhm.
whole thing is crazy.
Mhm.
I don't need any other outside influence to make it any more crazier. I need breath to bring me back to sanity. And so that's kind of how it's evolved.
No, I love that. And I do appreciate your passion. It definitely sh like shines through, shone through. It was very evident in this episode, and I do appreciate you
Yeah.
for sharing it with the audience. I hope that again, if someone could even just make a small tweak, especially if they're local, check out Yellowbird. I'm just really grateful for you
Yep.
joining me.
Yep. And there are yellowbirds, not called yellowbird, but a version of it wherever you're listening. Get online,
Hmm.
maybe start at a farmer's market. You're going to see things there and ask questions there that'll get you in tune to your local food system. You might have like what's called like a multi-farm CSA or, a local food distributor that's like Yellowbird.
Hmm.
They're growing and they're popping up and they're becoming a thing. And so, yeah, just you can find it where you're at usually. It just requires a little digging.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, like I said, bringing this information to my audience today. I think it'll be extremely beneficial to at least someone listening.
Yes, and you can give my information. You can tag me, however, so that people have direct access to me to ask questions. Usually, this raises 10 more questions, and so that's what that's what we do. That's the whole mission.